Daniel Harper had never been one for heroics. He was a soldier, sure, but not the kind who craved glory or recognition. All he wanted was to do his job and make it back home in one piece. That's what he told himself every time he suited up, every time he stepped onto alien soil. But today, things were different. Today, everything changed. The planet they called Cytherian 7 wasn't like Earth at all. The sky was a sickly greenish hue, streaked with clouds of ash that drifted lazily across the horizon. The ground beneath his boots felt brittle, as though it might crack open if he stepped too hard. Around him, the remnants of an ancient city. Sprawled out like broken bones, a jagged labyrinth of crumbling towers and shattered streets. It was quiet now, eerily so, except for the occasional groan of collapsing structures far off in the distance. Daniel had been separated from his unit during the chaos of battle earlier that day. They'd come under heavy fire from enemy drones small, fast-moving machines armed with enough firepower to tear through steel. His team scattered, trying to regroup, but Daniel got cut off when part of a building collapsed behind him, blocking his path. Now alone and low on ammunition, he moved cautiously through the ruins, scanning for any sign of movement. Every shadow seemed alive. Every sound carried menace. He wasn't sure how long he'd been wandering when he saw it. At first, he thought it was just another pile of rubble, an oddly shaped mound tucked into the corner where two walls met. But then it moved. A tiny hand reached out, brushing against the debris before quickly retreating. Daniel froze, his heart pounding in his chest. Slowly, he lowered his weapon and took a step closer, peering around the edge of the wall. He found himself staring at a creature unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was small, no taller than a child, with smooth gray skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Its eyes were enormous, glowing softly like twin moons and filled with unmistakable fear. It crouched there, trembling, clutching something close to its chest, a tattered scrap of fabric, maybe, or some sort of toy. Whatever it was, the object clearly meant something important to the little being. For a moment, neither of them moved. Daniel didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. This wasn't one of the enemy soldiers. It was just a kid. An alien kid, yes, but still a child. And children weren't supposed to be caught up in wars waged by adults. He swallowed hard, trying to push down the knot forming in his stomach. "Hey," he said softly, keeping his voice steady. "It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." The creature blinked, tilting its head slightly as if unsure what to make of him. Then, without warning, the silence shattered. The whine of engines filled the air, growing louder by the second. Daniel spun around just in time to see 3 sleek drones swoop down from above, their metallic bodies gleaming ominously. Their weapons charged, glowing red-hot as they locked onto their target. Daniel didn't think. There wasn't time. 1 second, he was standing there, frozen in shock. The next, he was diving forward, throwing himself between the drones and the child. Pain exploded across his back as the first shot hit, searing through his armor and sending him sprawling to the ground. Another blast followed, grazing his shoulder, but somehow he managed to stay upright. His vision blurred and his ears rang, but he forced himself to keep moving. "Stay down," he shouted hoarsely, even though he doubted the child could understand him. Using the last reserves of strength he had left, he shoved the creature further into the shadows, shielding it with his own body as the drones continued their assault. Each impact sent waves of agony coursing through him, but he gritted his teeth and held on, refusing to let go. Just when it seemed like it would never end, help arrived. A deafening roar echoed through the ruins as reinforcements from Daniel's unit descended upon the scene. Bright beams of energy lanced out, striking the drones and forcing them to retreat. Within moments, the attackers were gone, disappearing into the sky as quickly as they'd come. Silence fell once more, broken only by the sound of distant footsteps approaching. Someone knelt beside Daniel, their face swimming in and out of focus. "Harper, Harper, can you hear me? It was Rachel, his comrade. She sounded worried, her voice tight with urgency. He tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Darkness crept in at the edges of his vision, pulling him under. Before he lost consciousness completely, he glanced over at the child. It was still huddled in the corner, wide-eyed and unharmed. For reasons he couldn't explain, that gave him a strange sense of peace. He didn't know who or what that little creature was, but he knew one thing for certain: saving it had been worth it. When Daniel woke up hours later in the medical bay aboard the human fleet ship, he learned two important pieces of information. First, he'd survived, though barely. Second, the child he'd saved had summoned its mother, a powerful matriarch from the enemy species. According to the reports, she was demanding to meet the man who had protected her offspring. No one knew exactly why, but everyone agreed on one thing: this meeting would change everything for better or worse. Daniel Harper woke up to the hum of machinery and the sterile smell of antiseptic. The medical bay aboard the human fleet ship was quiet, save for the occasional beep of monitors tracking his vitals. His body ached all over, but the sharp pain from earlier had dulled to a manageable throb. He blinked against the bright lights overhead, trying to piece together what had happened. Bits and pieces came back to him: the ruins, the child, the drones, the unbearable heat of their weapons, and then Rachel's voice calling his name as everything went black. Rachel herself was sitting nearby, her face pale with worry. When she saw him stir, she leaned forward, relief washing over her features. "You're awake," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Daniel replied, his voice hoarse. He tried to sit up, but Rachel gently pushed him back down. "Take it easy. You took a beating out there." Daniel nodded weakly, letting his head sink back into the pillow. "The kid, is it okay?" Rachel hesitated before answering. "Yeah, it's fine. Thanks to you." She paused, studying him carefully. "Do you remember anything about what happened after we pulled you out?" He shook his head, wincing at the movement. "Not much. Just flashes." Rachel sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Well, here's the short version. That kid you saved, turns out it's not just any alien. It's the offspring of some big shot, like really high up in their hierarchy. And now its mother wants to meet you." Daniel frowned. "Meet me? Why?" "No one's sure yet. But apparently, she's been demanding answers ever since her kid came back safe. Word is, she's on her way here right now." The news sank in slowly, like cold water dripping into a pool. Daniel wasn't sure how to feel. Part of him was relieved he'd done the right thing, hadn't he? But another part of him couldn't shake the unease creeping into his gut. This wasn't just a simple thank you visit. Something about the situation felt off. A few hours later, Daniel found himself standing in a secure meeting room deep within the ship. The walls were lined with reinforced glass, and armed guards stood ready outside the door. Across from him sat Valithra, the child's mother. She was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen: a towering figure with shimmering silver skin and eyes that glowed faintly, even in the artificial light. Her presence filled the room, commanding attention without effort. Beside her stood the child, smaller and more fragile looking than Daniel remembered, clutching tightly to its mother's hand. For a long moment, no one spoke. Valithra studied him intently, her gaze piercing, yet strangely calm. Finally, she broke the silence. Her voice, translated through a device on the table, was deep and melodic, each word carrying weight. "You are the one who protected my youngling," she said, her tone neutral but firm. "Yes," Daniel replied, his voice steady despite the nerves twisting inside him. "I didn't have much choice. Those drones were going to hurt it." Valithra tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words. "You risked your life for an enemy." "Why?" The question caught Daniel off guard. He hesitated, searching for the right answer. How could he explain something he barely understood himself? "It was just instinct," he said finally. "I couldn't stand by and let them hurt a child. Not when I could do something about it. Valithra's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes' approval, maybe, or curiosity. She turned to look at the child, who gazed up at her with wide, trusting eyes. Then she looked back at Daniel. In our culture, she began, acts of selflessness are sacred. To protect one of our own is to earn our gratitude and our obligation. By shielding my youngling, you have formed a bond with us. A debt must be repaid. Daniel blinked, processing her words. A debt? He echoed. What kind of debt? Valithra rose gracefully to her full height, her movements fluid and deliberate. You will come with me to my homeworld. There, you will be welcomed as family. This is the only fitting repayment for what you have done. The room seemed to shrink around Daniel. Family? He glanced at Rachel, who stood nearby, her face tense. She gave him a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head, warning him to tread carefully. I appreciate the offer, Daniel said slowly, choosing his words with care. But I'm a soldier. My place is here with my people. Valithra's gaze hardened ever so slightly. This is not a request. It is a matter of honor for both our species. Refusal would dishonor the bond you have created. Do you wish to undo your noble act? Her words hung heavy in the air. Daniel knew she was right, in a way. Turning her down wouldn't just insult her. It could reignite the conflict between humans and her kind. Yet agreeing meant leaving behind everything he knew, stepping into the unknown with creatures he barely understood. Either choice carried risks. Rachel stepped forward, breaking the tension. Can we have a moment? She asked, her tone polite but firm. Valithra nodded once, then turned her attention to the child. Speaking softly in their native tongue dot as soon as they were alone, Rachel turned to Daniel, her voice low and urgent. Are you crazy? You can't just go off with them. We don't know anything about their world or their intentions. I don't think I have a choice, Daniel replied quietly. If I say no, it'll make things worse. Maybe this is the chance we've been waiting for to build trust, to find common ground. Rachel stared at him, frustration written all over her face. And what if it's a trap? What if they're using this whole honor thing to get to you? Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I don't know, but I can't ignore the possibility that this could actually work. If I go, maybe it'll open doors we never thought possible. Before Rachel could argue further, Valithra returned, her expression unreadable. Have you made your decision? She asked. Daniel straightened, squaring his shoulders. I'll go, he said firmly. But on one condition, my people need to know I'm doing this willingly. No tricks, no hidden agendas. Just honesty. Valithra regarded him for a long moment, then inclined her head. Agreed. Your courage does you credit, human. Prepare yourself. We depart at dawn. Later that night, as Daniel packed a few belongings into a small bag, Rachel knocked on the doorframe of his quarters. She looked conflicted, torn between anger and concern. You really think this is the right call? She asked, leaning against the doorway. I don't know, Daniel admitted, zipping up the bag. But sometimes, doing the right thing means taking a leap of faith. Besides, he paused, giving her a small smile. If anyone can handle being outnumbered, it's me. Rachel managed a weak laugh, though her eyes still brimmed with worry. Just promise me one thing. Don't forget where you came from, okay? Don't lose sight of who you are. Daniel nodded. Reaching for the pendant, she handed him a small engraved disc bearing Earth's coordinates. I won't, he promised. No matter where I end up, I'll always remember home. As Rachel left, Daniel sat down on the edge of his bunk, staring at the pendant in his hand. Tomorrow, he would leave everything familiar behind, venturing into uncharted territory with beings who viewed him as both savior and stranger. Fear lingered in the corners of his mind, but so did hope. Maybe, just maybe, this journey would lead to something greater than either side had imagined. The journey to Valithura's homeworld felt longer than Daniel had anticipated. The alien vessel was sleek and silent, its interior bathed in soft, pulsating light that seemed alive. There were no windows, only smooth walls that shifted colors faintly as if responding to the ship's movements. Daniel sat alone in a small chamber assigned to him. The pendant Rachel had given him clutched tightly in his hand. He hadn't expected luxury, but he also hadn't expected such stark simplicity. The room contained only a low platform for sleeping, and a single glowing orb embedded in the ceiling that provided warmth and illumination. Valithra rarely spoke during the trip, though she checked on him occasionally, her towering presence filling the doorway each time. Her visits were brief, almost formal, as if she were ensuring he remained comfortable without intruding too much. The child, however, often lingered near the entrance of his quarters, peeking in shyly before darting away. Daniel noticed Howard's luminous eyes followed him whenever they crossed paths in the narrow corridors. It reminded him of a curious animal, unsure whether to trust but drawn by instinct all the same. When the ship finally landed, Daniel braced himself for what lay ahead. The atmosphere outside was thick and humid, carrying an earthy scent that reminded him of rain-soaked forests back home. But the similarities ended there. The sky above shimmered with hues of purple and gold, casting long shadows across the jagged landscape. Towering crystalline structures jutted out of the ground like massive shards of glass, reflecting the strange sunlight in dazzling patterns. It was beautiful and completely alien. Valithra led him to a winding path toward one of these structures, which turned out to be her home. Inside, the air was cool and carried a faint hum, as though the building itself were alive. The floors and walls glowed softly, pulsing in rhythm with the natural light filtering through translucent panels overhead. Other aliens moved about, their silvery skin catching the glow as they paused to stare at Daniel. Some looked curious, others wary, but none approached him directly. That night, after being shown to a modest living space within the structure, Daniel found it hard to sleep. Every sound, the distant hum of machinery, the occasional murmur of voices kept him alert. He wandered into a central chamber where Valithra stood beside a large basin filled with liquid that shimmered like mercury. She glanced at him briefly, before returning her focus to the basin. "You are restless," she said, her voice calm yet probing. "I guess I'm still adjusting," Daniel admitted, stepping closer. "This place, it's not exactly what I'm used to." Valithra nodded slightly, dipping her fingers into the basin. The surface rippled, forming shapes that resembled stars and planets. "Your world is young compared to ours. Your people have yet to learn patience." Daniel frowned, unsure how to respond. Patience isn't easy when survival is on the line. Nor is understanding, Valithra countered gently. But both require effort. Before Daniel could reply, the child entered the chamber, clutching something in its hands. It hesitated for a moment before walking over to Daniel and holding out the object, a small, intricately carved figurine made from some kind of iridescent material. Its meaning wasn't immediately clear, but the gesture felt significant. "What is this?" Daniel asked, accepting the gift carefully. "A token of gratitude," Valithra explained. "Among our kind, such offerings symbolize acceptance. Acceptance." The word echoed in Daniel's mind as he examined the figurine. Was this their way of saying he belonged here now? Or was it simply a formality, a ritual meant to ease tensions? Either way, he couldn't deny the weight of the moment. For the first time since arriving, he felt a flicker of connection not just with the child, but with the family it represented. Over the next few days, Daniel began learning more about the culture surrounding him. Valithra introduced him to Keller, her mate, whose presence was quieter but no less commanding. Unlike Valithra, who radiated authority, Keller exuded strength through stillness. His deep-set eyes observed everything, and while he didn't speak often, his words carried immense weight. Through translators and gestures, Daniel pieced together fragments of their language and customs. Meals were communal affairs, shared around low tables in a circular gathering area. Food came in forms unfamiliar to him, gelatinous orbs that burst with flavor, leaf-like sheets that dissolved on contact with saliva, but everyone encouraged him to try everything. At first, he hesitated, unsure what might agree with his human biology. But when Valithra herself sampled each dish alongside him, he pushed past his reservations. Rituals played a central role in daily life. Each morning began with a ceremony involving music created by resonating crystals, their tones vibrating through the air and into the body. Daniel learned that these songs were believed to align individuals with the planet's natural rhythms, fostering harmony between themselves and their environment. Though skeptical at first, he found the experience oddly soothing, the vibrations lulling his thoughts into a meditative state. Despite these efforts to include him, Daniel couldn't ignore the undercurrent of tension among certain members of the community. Some aliens avoided him altogether, casting wary glances in his direction whenever he passed. Others whispered behind raised hands, their glowing eyes flickering with suspicion. One afternoon, while exploring the outskirts of the settlement, he encountered Lirana, a young female whose sharp features mirrored her guarded demeanor. "You should not be here," she said bluntly, blocking his path. Her tone was accusatory, though not outright hostile. "This is not your place." Daniel stopped, taken aback by her directness. "I didn't choose to come here," he replied evenly. "But I'm trying to understand your ways. Isn't that worth something?" Lirana narrowed her eyes. "Understanding does not erase difference. You are human. We are not. That gap cannot be bridged." Her words stung, but Daniel refused to let them provoke him. Instead, he took a step closer, meeting her gaze steadily. "Maybe not entirely, but doesn't it make sense to try? If we can find even a little common ground, isn't that better than fighting?" For a moment, Lirana faltered, her expression softening ever so slightly. Then she shook her head, turning away. "You do not belong here," she repeated quietly. Before disappearing into the shadows, back in his quarters later that evening, Daniel replayed the conversation in his mind. Lirana's distrust wasn't unexpected after all. Humans and her kind had been enemies for years. But her words struck a nerve because they hinted at a deeper truth. No matter how hard he tried, he would always be an outsider. Yet, despite this realization, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant to be here, that saving the child had set something in motion, something bigger than himself. As he drifted off to sleep, clutching the figurine gifted to him by the child, Daniel resolved to keep pushing forward. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain: giving up wasn't an option. Not now, not ever. Life on Valithra's homeworld was a constant balancing act for Daniel Harper. Each day brought new challenges, new lessons, and new moments of doubt. The aliens around him were patient, but their patience had limits. They watched him closely, their glowing eyes following his every move as if trying to decipher what made him tick. Some days, Daniel felt like he was living under a microscope, every action scrutinized and judged. Other days, he almost forgot he was different almost. Spent most mornings learning about the culture and traditions of Valithra's people. Keller often joined these sessions, offering quiet guidance while Valithra took charge of explaining broader concepts. Their society valued unity above all else, emphasizing the importance of working together for the greater good. Individual desires were secondary to the needs of the group, a stark contrast to the more self-centered tendencies Daniel had grown up with on Earth. At first, this idea seemed foreign, even restrictive. But over time, he began to see its appeal. There was a kind of peace in knowing that everyone shared the same goal, even if it meant sacrificing personal freedom. One tradition stood out to Daniel: the Gathering of Echoes. It happened once a week, bringing the entire community together in a vast chamber filled with towering crystal formations. The crystals hummed softly, resonating with the voices of those who spoke. During the gathering, each member of the community shared a story or memory, recounting events from the past week. These stories weren't just casual updates. They were deeply personal reflections meant to strengthen bonds within the group. When it came time for Daniel to participate, he hesitated. What could he possibly share that would resonate with them? I don't know what to say, he admitted to Valithra before the event. My life isn't like yours. I don't have echoes worth sharing. Valithra tilted her head, studying him thoughtfully. Echoes are not measured by grandeur but by truth. Speak of something real, no matter how small. Encouraged by her words, Daniel decided to talk about Rachel, the friend who had given him the pendant, and the sacrifices she had made to support him throughout his career. He described her unwavering loyalty, her sharp wit, and the way she always managed to ground him when things got overwhelming. As he spoke, he noticed ripples traveling through the crystals, their vibrations matching the emotions in his voice. When he finished, the room fell silent for a moment before murmurs of approval spread among the listeners. For the first time, Daniel felt truly seen not as an outsider, but as someone worthy of inclusion. Despite these moments of connection, not everyone welcomed him with open arms. Suspicion lingered in the hearts of some, especially among the younger generation. Lyrana continued to avoid him whenever possible, though their paths occasionally crossed during communal activities. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of physical training, a requirement imposed by Valithra. To test his endurance, Daniel found himself sitting alone near a bubbling stream outside the settlement. The water shimmered faintly, reflecting the twin moons hanging low in the sky. Lyrana appeared unexpectedly, her silhouette framed by the pale light. She hesitated for a moment before sitting down beside him, keeping a careful distance. "You're still here," she said flatly, staring at the water. "Yeah," Daniel replied, surprised by her presence. "Where else would I go?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Home, to your own people." Daniel sighed, leaning back on his hands. "I've told you before. I'm here because I want to help. Maybe not everyone understands that yet, but I'm not leaving until I do." Lyrana frowned, her gaze flickering toward him briefly. "Help? How can you help us? You don't understand our ways. You don't belong." "Maybe not," Daniel conceded. "But belonging isn't something you're born with. It's something you earn, and I'm willing to work for it." His words seemed to catch her off guard. She looked away, her expression unreadable. After a long pause, she spoke again, her tone softer this time. "Why did you save my cousin, the child you didn't have to do that?" Daniel considered the question carefully. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because no one deserves to suffer, least of all a kid, even if they're different." Lyrana stared at him, her luminous eyes searching his face. Then, without another word, she stood and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Though their conversation ended abruptly, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. Perhaps it wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was progress. As weeks turned into months, Daniel grew more accustomed to life among Valithra's people. He learned to navigate their rituals, adapt to their customs, and communicate using a mix of gestures and broken phrases in their language. Slowly but surely, he earned the trust of many, including Keller, who began treating him less like an outsider and more like a protege. Even Lyrana's hostility softened, replaced by cautious curiosity. She still kept her distance, but there were moments when she lingered nearby, observing him without judgment. One day, Valithra approached him during a break from training. Her demeanor was unusually serious, her glowing eyes fixed on his face. "There is something you must prepare for," she said, her voice steady but firm. "A trial awaits you." "A trial?" Daniel echoed, his stomach tightening. "What kind of trial?" "It is called the Trial of Unity," Valithra explained. "It tests your commitment to our family, your willingness to embrace our values. Success will solidify your place among us, failure." She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "Failure means exile." Daniel swallowed hard, his mind racing. He had known this moment would come eventually. Valithra had hinted. At it before, but hearing it spoken aloud made it feel real unavoidable. "When does it happen?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "In 3 days," she replied. "Use this time wisely." The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Valithra and Keller guided him through exercises designed to sharpen his focus and build resilience. They taught him breathing techniques to calm his nerves and visualization methods to strengthen his resolve. Despite their efforts, Daniel couldn't shake the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. What exactly would the trial entail? Would he be physically tested? Mentally? Emotionally? All he knew for sure was that failure wasn't an option not. If he wanted to prove himself. On the morning of the trial, Daniel woke early, his heart pounding in his chest. The community gathered in the central chamber, forming a circle around a raised platform where he would stand. Valithra and Keller stood at the edge of the crowd, their expressions unreadable. Lyrana was there too, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her eyes locked on him. As the ceremony began, a deep hum filled the chamber, emanating from the crystals embedded in the walls. Daniel stepped onto the platform, feeling the vibrations travel up through his feet and into his body. A hooded figure approached, carrying a bowl filled with shimmering liquid. They dipped their fingers into the bowl and traced symbols onto Daniel's forehead and hands, marking him as a participant. Then the vision started. They came in flashes, images, and sensations, flooding his mind so vividly that he couldn't tell what was real and what was imagined. He saw Earth, burning and barren, its skies choked with smoke. He saw his friends back home, calling out to him, begging him to return. He saw Valithra's people, torn apart by war, their crystalline city reduced to rubble. Each vision forced him to make a choice, protect humanity or aid his adopted family. The decisions weighed heavily on him, pulling at his heart and testing his resolve. Through it all, Daniel clung to one thought, the reason he had come here in the first place. He hadn't saved the child to win favor or gain power. He had done it because it was right. That belief carried him through the trial, steadying his hand and clearing his mind. When the final vision faded and the hum subsided, he found himself kneeling on the platform, breathless and trembling but alive. The crowd erupted into murmurs, their glowing eyes wide with awe. Valithra stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You have succeeded," she said simply, pride evident in her voice. "Welcome home, Erender." For the first time since arriving, Daniel allowed himself to believe he truly belonged. Life after the trial of Unity changed for Daniel in ways he hadn't anticipated. The title Erender, which Valithra had bestowed upon him, carried weight far beyond what he initially understood. It wasn't just a name. It was a role, a responsibility that bound him to the community in ways both visible and unseen. To the aliens around him, he was no longer just a human who saved a child. He was now a symbol of unity, a bridge between two worlds. This newfound status brought respect, but it also brought expectations, some of which Daniel struggled to meet. Each day felt like walking the tightrope. On one side were the rituals and traditions of Valithra's people, which required his full attention and participation. On the other side were his own instincts, shaped by years of living as a human soldier. Sometimes these two sides clash, leaving him unsure of how to proceed. For instance, during communal meals, Daniel often found himself hesitating before eating certain dishes. While the glowing orbs and leaf-like sheets weren't harmful, Valithra assured him of that, they still felt alien, unfamiliar. He worried about offending anyone by refusing, yet forcing himself to eat them made him feel disconnected from his own identity. Keller noticed Daniel's internal struggle one evening during a gathering of echoes. After the ceremony ended, he approached Daniel, his deep-set eyes studying him carefully. "You carry burdens we cannot see," Keller said, his voice low and steady. "Speak of them." Daniel hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. But something about Keller's calm demeanor encouraged him to open up. "I don't know if I'm doing enough," he admitted finally. Everyone here looks at me like I'm supposed to be this. Perfect example of unity. But I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I don't always understand what's expected of me. Keller nodded slowly, as though he'd been expecting this response. Perfection is not required, he said. Only effort. You have given yourself fully to our ways, even when they challenge you. That is enough. The words struck a chord within Daniel. They reminded him of something Rachel had once told him back on the ship. Don't lose sight of who you are. Maybe being Arender didn't mean abandoning his humanity. It meant finding a way to blend it with the values of his new family. Despite Keller's reassurance, tension simmered beneath the surface. Not everyone accepted Daniel's presence, no matter how hard he tried. Lyrana, in particular, remained skeptical, though her hostility softened over time. She stopped avoiding him entirely, instead choosing to observe him from afar, her sharp eyes missing nothing. One afternoon, while Daniel practiced climbing one of the jagged crystalline formations near the settlement, a skilled Valithra insisted he master Lyrana appeared unexpectedly, watching him silently. You're getting better, she said after. A while, her tone neutral. Daniel glanced down at her, surprised by the comment. Thanks, he replied, carefully descending to solid ground. I guess all this training is paying off. Lyrana crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. Why do you bother? Most humans wouldn't care about learning our ways. I'm not most humans, Daniel countered gently. And besides, your ways aren't so different from mine. We both value protecting what matters. That's why I'm here to protect what I can, whether it's Earth or this place. Lyrana frowned, her luminous eyes narrowing. But what happens when Earth calls you back? Will you abandon us then? The question caught Daniel off guard. He hadn't thought much about returning to Earth, not because he didn't miss it, but because he assumed such a decision would come later. Now, faced with the possibility, he realized how complicated it was. How could he choose between two? Homes? I don't know, he admitted honestly. Right now, my place is here. If Earth needs me someday, I'll figure it out. But until then, I'm staying. Lyrana studied him for a long moment before nodding once, apparently satisfied with his answer. Good, she said simply, turning to leave. As she walked away, Daniel couldn't help but wonder if he finally earned her trust, or at least part of it. Months passed, and Daniel grew more comfortable in his role as Arender. He participated in ceremonies, helped with daily tasks, and even began teaching others basic phrases in English, hoping to foster mutual understanding. His efforts paid off in small but meaningful ways. Children started approaching him more frequently, their curiosity outweighing their fear. Adults greeted him warmly, inviting him to join conversations or share stories during gatherings. Even Lyrana began seeking him out occasionally, asking questions about Earth and its people. One day, as Daniel sat near the bubbling stream outside the settlement, sketching pictures of Earth's landscapes in the dirt, Valithra joined him. She watched quietly as he drew mountains, rivers, and cities, her glowing eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. Your world is beautiful, she said after a while. Different from ours, but beautiful nonetheless. Thank you, Daniel replied, brushing the dirt off his hands. It's home. Even though I'm here now, I still think about it a lot. Valithra nodded, her expression thoughtful. Do you regret coming here? Leaving your people behind? Daniel considered the question carefully. There were moments when he missed Earth desperately, the taste of fresh air, the sound of laughter shared with friends, the comfort of familiarity. But there were also moments when he felt more alive than ever, surrounded by beings who challenged him to grow, to adapt, to become something greater than he'd know. He said finally, I don't regret it. Being here has taught me things I never would have learned otherwise. About myself, about life, about what it means to belong somewhere. Valithra smiled faintly, placing a hand on his shoulder. Belonging is not. Given it is earned, And you have earned it, Daniel Harper. Her words filled him with a sense of pride, but also a lingering uncertainty. Belonging came with responsibilities, and Daniel knew he couldn't stay forever. Someday, Earth might need him again. Or perhaps his presence here would inspire others to reach out, creating a lasting connection between their species. Whatever the future held, he vowed to face it with courage and with the lessons he'd learned along the way. As twilight fell over the alien landscape, casting long shadows across the ground, Daniel gazed up at the twin moons hanging low in the sky. They reminded him of the pendant Rachel had given him, engraved with Earth's coordinates. He reached into his pocket, feeling its cool surface against his fingertips. No matter where he went, no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would always remember where he came from and where he belonged now. Years passed, and Daniel Harper became a fixture in Valithra's community. The once strange rituals and customs now felt as natural to him as breathing. He had earned the trust of nearly everyone, even those who had doubted him at first. Lirana, in particular, had warned to him significantly. She no longer questioned his motives or treated him with suspicion. Instead, she sought his advice on matters both personal and communal, valuing his perspective as someone who understood both worlds. Daniel's role as Arender evolved over time. He wasn't just a participant in ceremonies or a guest in their home. He was actively contributing to the growth and stability of the community. His knowledge of Earth's technology proved invaluable when it came to repairing damaged equipment or improving systems that supported daily life. In return, the aliens shared their own advancements, teaching him techniques for harnessing energy from the planet's unique resources. Together, they created solutions neither species could have achieved alone. Despite these accomplishments, Daniel often found himself reflecting on Earth. He missed the simplicity of human interactions, the laughter, the shared meals, the unspoken bonds between friends. He wondered how Rachel was doing, whether she still thought about him, and if anyone back home remembered his name. These thoughts didn't make him regret his decision. They only deepened his resolve to build a bridge between the two worlds. If he couldn't go back to Earth physically, perhaps he could bring a piece of it here. One evening, as Daniel sat near the glowing basin in Valithra's chamber, sketching designs for a new water filtration system inspired by Earth's methods, a messenger arrived. The young alien bowed respectfully before speaking. "Valithra requests your presence immediately," they said. Their voice tinged with urgency. Daniel stood quickly, brushing dirt from his hands. "What's wrong?" he asked, sensing the tension in the air. "There are ships approaching," the messenger replied. "Human ships." The news hit Daniel like a punch to the chest. For a moment, he couldn't move, his mind racing with possibilities. Were they friend or foe? Had Earth sent them to retrieve him, or worse, to retaliate against Valithra's people? Whatever the reason, their arrival would change everything. When Daniel reached the central chamber, Valithra and Keller were already there, their expressions grim. A holographic display hovered above the basin, showing several human vessels orbiting the planet. Their sleek shapes and familiar insignias confirmed what Daniel feared most. This was an official delegation from Earth. "They've requested permission to land," Valithra said, turning to Daniel. "They claim to seek peaceful negotiations, but we cannot be certain of their intentions." Daniel nodded, his heart pounding. "I should talk to them. They'll listen to me." Valithra hesitated, her glowing eyes searching his face. "You'll risk much by stepping forward. If they see you as compromised—" "I'm not compromised," Daniel interrupted firmly. "I'm proof that cooperation is possible. Let me show them that." After a long pause, Valithra inclined her head. "Very well. But know this, if you choose this path, you may never return to us." The weight of her words settled heavily on Daniel's shoulders. He knew she was right. Stepping onto that ship might mean leaving behind everything he built here. But staying silent wasn't an option either. This was his chance to forge a lasting peace between humans and Valithra's people. The meeting took place aboard one of the human ships. a sterile environment filled with cold metal walls and blinking monitors. As Daniel entered the conference room, he recognized some of the faces immediately. Rachel Mitchell stood near the back, her expression unreadable. Beside her was Commander Lewis, a stern man with graying hair and a reputation for being unyielding. At the head of the table sat Ambassador Hayes, a middle-aged woman known for her diplomatic skills. "Daniel Harper," Ambassador Hayes said, rising to greet him. Her tone was neutral, but her eyes betrayed a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "We weren't sure we'd find you alive." "I'm here," Daniel replied simply, taking a seat across from her. "And I'm glad you've come peacefully." Ambassador Hayes studied him carefully before responding. "Your disappearance caused quite a stir. We assumed the worst, that you've been captured or worse. Imagine our surprise when we received transmissions from this planet claiming you were safe and accepted." Daniel leaned forward, choosing his words carefully. "It's true. I've been living among Valithra's people, learning their ways and working alongside them. They're not our enemies, not anymore." Commander Lewis scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "That's easy for you to say. You've gone native." Rachel stepped forward, shooting Lewis a warning glance before addressing Daniel. "We need to understand what's happening here, Daniel. Why did you stay? What do they want from us?" "They don't want anything from you," Daniel said firmly. "They saved my life, just as I saved theirs. We've built something here, a partnership based on trust and mutual respect. It's fragile, but it works." Ambassador Hayes listened intently, her fingers tapping lightly on the table. "And you believe this partnership can extend to all of humanity?" "I do," Daniel replied without hesitation. "But it won't happen overnight. Both sides will need to make sacrifices, to let go of old grudges and fears. That's why I'm asking you to give this a chance, to start talking instead of fighting." For a long moment, the room fell silent. Then Ambassador Hayes nodded slowly, her expression softening. "Very well. We'll begin formal negotiations. But understand this, Daniel, you're walking a dangerous line. One misstep, and everything you've worked for could collapse." "I know," Daniel said, meeting her gaze steadily. "But I'm willing to take that risk." Back on the planets surface, Daniel relayed the outcome of the meeting to Valithra and Keller. Their relief was evident, though tempered by caution. "This is only the beginning," Valithra warned. "Trust must be earned anew with each step." Daniel nodded, knowing she was right. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and compromises. But for the first time in years, he felt hopeful. Hopeful that his efforts hadn't been in vain, that the bond he'd formed with Valithra's people could serve as a foundation for something greater. As the days turned into weeks, negotiations progressed slowly but steadily. Humans and aliens exchanged ideas, shared resources, and worked together to address common problems. Disagreements arose, as they always did, but they were resolved through dialogue rather than conflict. Through it all, Daniel remained a constant presence, guiding discussions and bridging gaps whenever tensions flared. Lorana approached him one evening as the twin moons hung low in the sky. "You've changed things," she said quietly. "For better or worse, I can't say yet, but thank you." Daniel smiled faintly, looking out over the shimmering landscape. "We're all just trying to find our place in the universe," he replied. "Sometimes that means building bridges instead of walls." Lorana nodded, her luminous eyes reflecting the pale light. "You belong here, Daniel Harper. Don't forget that." As she walked away, Daniel glanced down at the pendant in his hand, the small disc engraved with Earth's coordinates. It reminded him of where he came from, but also of where he was now. He had become a bridge between two worlds, proving that even in the vastness of space, compassion and understanding could light the darkest paths. Years passed, and the fragile peace Daniel Harper had helped forge between humans and Valithra's people began to take root. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, misunderstandings, and disagreements, but it was progress. Slowly but surely, the two species learned to coexist, sharing knowledge, resources, and even laughter. What had once seemed impossible now felt almost natural. Daniel stood at the center of it all, a living symbol of unity. His days were filled with work negotiating trade agreements, mediating disputes, and teaching both sides about each other's cultures. He acted as an interpreter, not just of language, but of values and traditions. To the humans, he explained the importance of rituals like the gathering of echoes. To the aliens, he introduced concepts like storytelling around campfires or celebrating milestones with music and dance. Over time, these exchanges created bonds that went deeper than treaties or alliances. They became friendships. One evening, as Daniel sat near the glowing basin in Valithra's chamber, he reflected on how far they'd come. The crystalline structure shimmered faintly, its light casting soft shadows across the walls. Valithra joined him, her presence as calming. "As ever, you have done well," she said simply, her voice carrying warmth. "Your efforts have brought us closer to true harmony." "I didn't do it alone," Daniel replied, smiling faintly. "Everyone played a part. You, Keller, Lirana, even Rachel and Ambassador Hayes. It's been a team effort." Valithra nodded, her glowing eyes thoughtful. "Still, you are the bridge. Without you, this might never have happened." The words made Daniel pause. He had always seen himself as just one piece of a much larger puzzle, but hearing Valithra say it aloud reminded him of the weight of his role. He wasn't just Daniel Harper anymore, he was errander, guardian, and peacemaker. The realization filled him with pride, but also a quiet sadness. Being a bridge meant standing between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. As the years went by, Daniel noticed changes within himself. His hair had grayed slightly at the temples, and his hands bore faint scars from countless repairs and projects. Yet his spirit remained strong, driven by the belief that what he was doing mattered. He often thought about Earth, wondering how much it had changed since he left. Did people still talk about him? Did they remember why he stayed behind? His questions were answered unexpectedly one day when a new delegation arrived from Earth. This time, the ships weren't military vessels. They were civilian transports carrying scientists, engineers, and families eager to explore opportunities for collaboration. Among them was Rachel Mitchell, her face lined with age, but her eyes as sharp as ever. When she stepped off the ship and saw Daniel waiting for her, tears welled up in her eyes. "You look good," she said, hugging him tightly. "Older, but good." Daniel laughed softly, returning the embrace. "You too, Rachel. It's been too long." They spent hours catching up, sitting together under the twin moons while Daniel shared stories of his life among the aliens. Rachel listened intently, occasionally shaking her head in disbelief. "You've really built something here," she said finally. "Something amazing. It wasn't easy," Daniel admitted. "But it was worth it." Rachel studied him carefully, her expression softening. "Do you ever miss home?" "Every day," Daniel replied honestly. "But this is my home now. I belong here." Rachel nodded, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of sadness. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small package wrapped in cloth. "I brought you something," she said, handing it to him. Inside was a photograph, a group picture taken years ago, back when Daniel was still part of the expeditionary force. He recognized everyone instantly: Rachel, Commander Lewis, Ambassador Hayes, and others who had shaped his journey. Their faces smiled up at him, frozen in time. For a moment, Daniel couldn't speak, overwhelmed by emotion. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice thick with gratitude. "This means more than you know." Life continued to evolve as cooperation deepened between humans and aliens. Settlements sprang up across the planet, blending architectural styles from both worlds. Children grew up learning multiple languages and customs, their identities shaped by the best of both cultures. Daniel watched it all unfold with a sense of wonder, knowing he had played a part in making it happen. Yet there were moments when Loneliness crept in. As much as he loved his adopted family, he sometimes missed the simplicity of human connection, the ease of speaking without needing translators, the comfort of shared memories. On those nights, he would sit outside, staring up at the stars and wondering what Earth looked like from so far away. One such night, Lyrana found him sitting by the stream, the pendant dangling from his fingers. She sat down beside him, her presence silent but comforting. "You're thinking about them," she said softly. "Yeah," Daniel admitted, glancing at her. "About Earth, about everything I left behind." Lyrana nodded, her luminous eyes reflecting the moonlight. "It's okay to miss it. But don't forget you've given us something we'll never lose. A future we wouldn't have had otherwise." Her words struck a chord within Daniel. He realized then that he hadn't sacrificed his humanity by staying here. He had expanded it. By embracing Valithra's world, he had become more than just a soldier or a human. He had become a bridge, a guardian, a symbol of hope. Years later, when Daniel's hair turned fully silver and his steps slowed with age, he stood alongside Valithra and Keller as ambassadors from Earth arrived seeking formal negotiations. Thanks to his efforts, relations between the two species improved significantly. Humans and aliens worked together on projects benefiting both civilizations, fostering genuine cooperation. Though Daniel missed Earth, he knew he belonged here now. Valithra once told him, "Family is not defined by blood, but by the choices we make." Those words echoed in his mind as he looked out over the horizon, watching twin suns set over the alien landscape. He had become a bridge between two vastly different worlds, proving that compassion transcended boundaries, even those between stars. And so, Daniel Harper, once a simple soldier, became a legend not just to the aliens who called him Arender, but to humanity itself, reminding everyone that even in the vastness of space, kindness could light the darkest paths.